Morning, you guys. Another episode, quick and dirty, with me, Wardo. Man, that's just autopilot to say that these days. Anyways, I'm surprised I don't just answer the phone that way sometimes. Anywho, man, it's a lot of excitement, a lot of people I see on Instagram, and people messaging me just about fitness and getting in hashtag sheep shape and shedding that winter shame, I think is what we should call it. Hey, the winter weight. I know I am. Not that I was super chubby or anything, but just pretty heavy. Not a lot of cardio over the winter for me with no ski touring. So, anyways, been exciting. Been shooting the bow a lot. In my apartment, actually, quite a bit. I've got like a 6.5 yard little run that just to work on just technique and getting more comfortable. Getting more comfortable with that tension release and everything. And actually, Yonki and I were talking about this too. And maybe somebody could update me. Maybe the Worldless Local Boys or Old Waste Dog or something like that, or anybody who's bow knowledgeable. I was gonna say more than me, but that doesn't take a lot. Is it starting to shoot with both eyes open a little bit? And Yonki was doing this too, and he basically had arrows touching at 30 yards, and just to. I don't know what that is or anything, but I kind of set it up through the peep, and then I just kind of keep looking through that dominant eye, and I keep both open, and life seems to be pretty good. Seems to be just more comfortable. I don't know why. Anyways, quick one today, but probably first, I am on the last of my Black Rifle coffee, so I've got to place a new order. This Fit Fuel goes down like Pilsners on a truck hunt. There we are. Let's just press that into my mug with a little MCT powder. Cheers, you guys. If you're watching on YouTube, or if you're on Spotify, or whatever streaming thing you use. Always a good mouth burn on a fresh cup of coffee. Ow. So today I think a short one. Although the intro has been a little lengthy. What I was wanting to talk about is something that is extremely important, and that's foot loading. And that is really the basis of support. So for everything that we do, and really can be a culprit for a lot of knee, hip, and low back pain. Can be obviously a cause of foot and ankle pain. That should go without saying. So where to begin? So the concept of foot loading, first of all, if somebody's ever giving you towel scrunches for an exercise, to just tell them to get out of the 1970s. There's a lot better stuff to do. So you don't need to do towel scrunches. Now, foot control, of maybe grabbing something on the ground with your feet and picking it up and putting it in your hand or something like that, that's a little different. But as far as like trying to strengthen your foot that way, there's just way better stuff to do. So what we're going to talk about, foot loading. So if you look down at your foot right now and you see kind of it with no sock on, you see there's your big toe, and then there's the knuckle of your big toe that's still like part of your foot, so it's not actually your toe. It's your first MTP. Then if you go to that same kind of knuckle area, but on the fifth, on your pinky toe, the little pig, that's your fifth, obviously. And then right in the center of your heel is the center of your heel. That makes up what we call the foot tripod. So if you're looking on YouTube right now, you've got kind of the first joint, the fifth joint, and then the heel, right? If you can imagine that, and it's like in a triangle shape. That is your foot tripod, and that is where we want to have equal forces. Like if you were on a force plate, you want to have equal forces on the ground, distributing kind of the load for when we squat, when we stand, even though you'll be a little bit probably more forward, that's fine. But when we're working out lunging, all those things, you want to have a good representation of that foot tripod. A big problem that I've seen more recently, and I think it's probably just because I've become a little bit more aware of it, and this is where it's so important to listen to your patients or whatever, or my patients, I guess, with the fact that people have been so so people have been made fearful of the word pronation. You're a pronator. It's like the equivalent of being a leper, I feel like. And there is nothing, your foot has to pronate. But what happens is sometimes people become so fearful of that they really try and stay on the outside of their foot. Like they literally, like the heel and the outside of their foot. And then what happens is when you don't put that first MTP, that first big knuckle, that big toe knuckle, into the ground, you actually, there's a direct link between there and the external rotators of the hip, or the lateral glute muscles. So what happens is people are trying to not pronate because they've been told at either by some shitty practitioner or no, I'm gonna take that back. I apologize. It's somebody who is misinformed, and I think they used to think this back then, but current day is you got to do your continuing education. You got to learn about this stuff, and the fact that that's okay. So it's okay for your foot to be flat. Like you don't need orthotics in your foot if your foot is flat. Other reasons potentially, it's okay for your foot to pronate. It has to, and if you're not putting good amount of pressure, because your foot rolls kind of from the middle to a little more outside of your heel, kind of rolls up the outside of your foot and then over towards your big toe, and then you toe off with your big toe. And then one of the big things is as we do that, if you're avoiding that, what happens is you actually miss the external rotators of your hip a little bit, and you end up kind of, a lot of the time your knee ends up going quite a bit more valgus, which is just like it collapses inward, which again isn't a death sentence by any stretch, but it's just not the best biomechanics for 10,000 walking steps a day, a lot of squats, lunges, certainly mechanics in the bush, these kinds of things. It's actually different for high explosive movements, but we won't get into that today. Okay, I'll get into it real quickly. A little bit of valgus collapse tightens up the lateral compartment of the thigh, and then you actually get a little bit more explosion. So you'll actually see a little bit of valgus force in the knee on a lot of sprint starts and sprinters and jumping. I'm not going to say that's best practice, but you don't have to there's sometimes these rules don't totally apply, but I'm talking about everyday stuff and then definitely a lot of repetitive movements. So we need we need good foot loading. And this is something to practice kind of like all the time, like you just shoes off, socks off at your house, and just when you're sitting there, you're watching the game, you're hanging out, just kind of feel that first MTP, the fifth MTP, and your heel just pressed into the ground, and that's what we need to do. And then I want you to take that a step further, and I want you to slowly start to, you're brushing your teeth, I want you to kind of squat when you're brushing your teeth or something silly like that, or you're waiting for the kettle to boil, and I want you to squat doing that, and I want you to notice that you have that equal weight between all those throughout the entire movement. And then even better than that is when we're in a split stance position and we're doing a back step lunge or we're doing a step up, and we've got equal pressure between our first, our fifth, and the center of our heel. And that clears up so much medial knee, medial hip problem, increases strength, has a better squat position. Like if you go into, especially you need dissociation of your hip at like the pelvis. If you just like go into a lunge, I was doing this with somebody just the other day who actually kind of came off the podcast local guy. If you just pop back step lunge, put your right foot forward, left foot back, step into a lunge, drop that knee to the ground, and look and see where that knee is. And what you want to do is keep a good equal pressures in your foot, and I want you to move that knee out a little bit. So I want you to keep good foot loading, because I actually hate the cue knees out, but I want you to almost move your whole leg laterally while keeping your foot like that equal pressure through the foot tripod. And what's really important there is that you can actually do that. So say when you're doing lunges, or you're doing a big hike and you've got a lot of stepping up to do, you're not crowding the inside portion. If you've ever had that pinch on the inside of your hip, that's a big part of it. So I think that's a super important skill. You're just creating space for your hip to move properly, and then, you know, with that being said, you'll decrease the amount of kind of that pinch or acetabular impingement that we sometimes get. So I think that's a super important part. These are things that you can practice all the time. You can just, when you're you're walking down the street, you're going to get a coffee, you're doing whatever, walking the dog, walking with your wife, just like feel that kind of toe off. You know, the funny thing that happens, people are like, man, I started to walk like quite a bit faster or something like that, you know? And so you just feel that big toe kind of press through and through the ground, and just make sure you're not trying to walk on the outside of your foot. Do not be worried about pronation. The difference is if we pronate and our whole leg collapses kind of medially, and that's a problem. So then we have to create better strength in the external rotators, and there's a bunch of stuff we can do for that, maybe on a different podcast or something. But those are kind of the things I wanted to leave you with today. Like I said, kind of short and sweet. I'm gonna have another sip of coffee here. It's just good. Oh, that's good. And then, yeah, you know, can't believe I can still just talk for X amount of time by myself. It's slightly worrying, I think, some weeks. Anywho, I think we got some more stuff coming up. I got a few other things in the pipe. Fire me any questions you guys ever have. I love hearing from everybody, especially as training kicks up. It's super awesome, and I just, again, thank you guys for allowing me to spew whatever knowledge I picked up over the years, and then, you know, yeah, I just can't appreciate all of you enough. Cheers. Have a great week.